Well, this is an amazing treat. Kim Wilde, hello.
Hi.
How you doing?
Oh, I'm so chuffed to be here. Absolutely. Love talking about the 80s.
And welcome along to Virgin Radio. You're part of the family. You've got your own door pass.
Got my own pass and everything.
It's great to have you here. You sound like, I was listening to the show last week on Virgin Radio 80s Plus. You sound like you're having like the best time.
I am having the best time because, you know what, the 80s decade isn't going anywhere.
No.
In fact, you know, it just kind of reinvents itself or gets stronger. There's more passion around the whole 80s phenomena now than there ever has been. You know, all the 80s retro concerts that I do, they're all packed out. It's amazing.
Everyone's wearing their clothes. Everyone
loves
loves
the songs.
the
clothes, and then also all the different generations are falling in love with it too. So it's not just the people who were there at the time; it's the generations after falling in love with the 80s.
Probably a really cruel thing of me to phone you up and say, Kim, I want your 10. Your 10 favourite songs. You were like, I've just got 10. How was it coming up with this list?
Well, there are some that just stand out, like Ultravox Vienna. I mean, you know, who's not going to choose that as one of the best songs from the 80s?
Well, let's start with that. What do you remember about this song? Because I heard you play this on your Sunday morning show on Virgin Radio 80s Plus.
Yeah.
And when you played it last week, it gave me, it's a Goosebumps song, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I've worked with Midge very many times in the years since then. Of course, at the time, I didn't know him. I didn't know Ultravox. I was just, you know, I was a kid going out buying records. I suppose he was too. And I just remember seeing it on Top of the Pops and just getting absolute goosebumps watching that. I remember thinking at the time, God, I wonder if I'll ever be on Top of the Pops. Because I did have aspirations of being a pop star, but I didn't think in a million years I'll be doing that too. But there's something about this song in particular. Every time you hear it, wow, you're straight back there, aren't you? Straight back.
That's your first pick. Kim Wilde's with me. This is my playlist on Virgin Radio. Part of the team on Virgin Radio 80s Plus. It's every Sunday morning at 10, isn't it?
Sunday morning at 10. I'll be there raving about my favourite decade. I mean, I was there and I was buying records. I still have them all at home.
Do you?
Yeah, and I've kept them, and I've got lots of magazines with, you know, all the magazines from the time, Smash Hits particularly. But I have a bit of an 80s collection going on at home, a few posters and stuff. It's all in a special box that I keep for I guess for my kids and for, you know, whoever else.
So we're talking about the time just before you were famous. Obviously you come from such a famous music family, the you know, the Wilde name, your dad, your father and stuff.
Yep.
Did you always have the aspiration to get into music yourself?
I did. I always knew I wanted to get into music. Music affected me very deeply from a very young age. I vividly remember being 8 years old in 1968 and listening to Anyone Who Had a Heart by Cilla Black and just being blown away. Now, you know, why would an 8-year-old be blown away by Cilla Black singing Anyone Who Had a Heart? Well, you know, it's amazing how deeply emotional 8-year-olds are and can be. And I never forgot it. And I remember thinking there can't be anything better on this planet than to be around music and to be moved by it. So yeah, I think probably I always really fancied being in the music industry somehow. And singing was such a natural for me anyway. I was always singing. When ABBA came along, that kind of sealed the deal, really. I just saw Agneta and Frida and I thought, I want to be one of them girls. That's got to be me.
Tell me about Kids in America. This is your next song on your place. And like to have this as your debut song.
Yeah,
that
amazing.
is incredible. So I was in a bar at the weekend. That's not a shocking bit of news, but this song came on and it got the biggest cheer of the night.
I know, it's incredible. A friend of mine sent me back a clip of a band playing Kids in America down in Ramsgate just the other night.
Yeah.
And everyone was going crazy.
How does it make you feel?
Over the moon. What a gift of a song this has been for me. The way it brings an audience alive, the energy it creates in an audience, it's just astonishing.
Did you know you were onto something special when you first read the lyrics and you first started singing this? Did it feel big, you know, back in the early part of the 80s?
I was 20 years old at the time. I just left art college. I was a little bit distracted. My mum had just had a baby, my sister Roxanne. I was, boyfriends and all kinds of stuff going on when you're 20. Lots going on. And Ricky started writing these fantastic tunes. My father, who was still very young at the time, because he was only about 40, and he started writing all these great lyrics. And they were doing something down at the studio in Hertfordshire, by the way. So it was a county thing. We recorded Kids in America in Hertfordshire. And how peculiar. Kids in America, right from the heart of Hertfordshire. And I did know, of course, when I sang that song, I just thought, wow. What can I say?
And it was huge around the world, wasn't it? I mean, this is your debut song.
Yeah,
how did your life change?
Well, it was. I was amazed really at how many records were being sold. Mickey Most used to phone me up and say, you sold 60,000 records today, and then he'd phone me up the next day and tell me I've sold another 80,000, and this was going on every single day. And I was all of a sudden I was I was at the airport. I was going to Germany. I was going all over the world as well. So the touch flame, the touch tape went all around the world. Yeah. Australia and America and all over Europe and the UK. It was really great to be a pop star at 20 years old, I can tell you.
I've got to ask you this question because, you had you were smiling when we were talking about that song. Do you ever get sick of songs like that? Because you must have performed it thousands of times. Or does that say you look like you still enjoy listening to it?
Yeah, I do. But, I think what happened, I did take a big break out of music. Not because I got fed up of the song Kids in America, but there was a point at which I grew tired of being Kim Wilde, and then I got married and I had my family and got into horticulture, got into something completely different. Yeah. I got into theatre as well, which was an interesting departure, and so I kind of retired Kids in America for an indefinite amount of period. In my mind, I wasn't sure if I would ever sing it again. Really? And I didn't want to sing it again until I enjoyed singing it again. And strangely enough, I got asked to do a charity concert locally, and they said, will you sing Kids again? And I said, oh, really? Really? And they said, yeah, oh, please, we really want to hear it again. And you know what? I loved it. I hadn't sung it for several years. The audience went crazy, and I thought, oh, wow, the love affair's back on. Yeah. And now it's just got stronger and stronger. And you see what that song does to a crowd, you can't help but be in love with Kids in America. The next song on your playlist, and thank you so much for joining us here on Virgin Radio, Kim Wilde, is Spandau Ballet. I know that you know Tony, don't you? Oh, you were telling me earlier about, he has got, that voice. That voice. Absolutely. Wow. His epic vocals, and they're still so strong and beautiful. Love working with the man. Have done many times and toured with him. Spent a lot of time laughing with him. Actually, he's lovely, isn't he? Yeah, he's really down to earth and really funny and really sweet. And I just got a bit of a soft spot for Tony Hadley. Can I ask you why you've picked this one from Spandau Ballet? Because this is apparently he did this. He told me because he was on this show a few weeks ago. He was a bit drunk when he sang this, apparently, because they come off Top of the Pops. Yes. And he drunk a few glasses of champagne and just did it and, went for it, hell for leather and stuff. Oh, that doesn't sound like Tony at all. How peculiar. I just remember dancing to it in a club just before my career took off. I remember thinking, this is one of the coolest songs I've ever heard. It was all like new romantic, and we were wearing all these frilly kind of white shirts, and we were going, down that road, a little club for heroes. It was a friend of mine called Kev Saunders. He set it up in Hartford. We used to go there a lot, and this was my favourite song. Nick Kershaw is another one of those like staple 80s stars. He almost like yourself had a conveyor belt of just the most amazing music. Yeah. Like perfect pop songs. Tell me more about what you think of people like Nick. Well, Nick's still writing incredible songs now. The last two albums that he did have just been crammed full of, I think, songs just as good as Wouldn't It Be Good and The Riddle.
Yeah.
So he's a perennial songwriter, Nick, incredibly talented, and his voice is still exactly the same.
Yes.
Has a unique, beautiful singing voice. And I've toured with him, I've recorded with him. We're good mates, Nick and I. So yeah, I mean, I did actually get to sing The Riddle with him on a tour in Australia. We did a sort of a 3-part harmony with my niece Scarlett and my brother Rick. We just all piled in on Nick's songs, and he piled in on ours. Actually, we toured together. He played in my band, and my brother and my niece played in his band. So yeah, it's a privilege to have him in my life at all many different levels, and always a joy to hear his music on the radio.
And as we go into this song, when this song was out, kind of like, I want to take you to the middle part of the 80s. Do you actually remember much about that time? Because you must have been going around the whole world at that time and doing gigs. I mean, can you remember doing all that?
I can. I mean, there was a lot of time spent in airports, a lot of time spent in dressing rooms, a lot of time spent with makeup artists doing my makeup, lots of hours and hours spent making videos, unbelievable amounts of money I think were passed as well, buying those videos. Crazy when you think about it, unbelievable. Anyway, lots of meeting my heroes and other pop stars, people whose records I was buying, I was suddenly doing TV shows with, and meeting and being overawed by. I remember being thoroughly overawed by meeting Elvis Costello. I'd bought all his albums, and then suddenly I was in a room saying hi to him, and he loved Kids in America, and it was all a bit overwhelming for a young girl. But I was having the time of my life, I was still so young. And I was getting to travel the world. I was getting to be a pop star, and it was just the best. And I got to be on top of the pops, for heaven's sakes. I mean, didn't get much better than that in my world. I think that, as time has gone by, I appreciate and love 80s more and more. Yeah, I definitely do. I guess there was probably a time in the 90s where I sort of like needed a break from it, and I did have a break. Yeah. And I got married and had kids and went off into horticulture, did different things, as I mentioned before. But when I got back into music, and not just my music, but all 80s music, became something really very, very special to me. It brought back incredible memories, and I just realised how lucky I was to be part of that decade, right from the beginning of it as well, not just kind of like jumping in the middle. You had the whole decade. Right in 1980, 81. Yeah.
As we go into Altered Images, we did talk about this briefly before, but can I ask you, do you remember your first Top of the Pops appearance? Because it was the show, wasn't it, to be on, and it felt like the whole of the UK tuned into that show to see the artists that they bought. Was it a lot of pressure? Was it nerve-wracking, the first one? And lots of people say the studio was so small. We've had so many people come in and go, oh, okay, Top of the Pops didn't seem how it should be.
Wow. I mean, I do remember being very scared and terrified, and everyone sort of said, oh, you look so cool, you were daring the camera, and you were doing all this sort of like hardly moving stuff, and that was sheer terror. That wasn't me being cool at all. Really? Really, yeah. I mean, I'd had so little experience. I hadn't spent hardly any time behind, with the camera pointed right at me. I did take to it like a duck to water, I have to say. There are lots of other things I wish I could take into like a duck to water, but anyway, looking at a camera seems to be one of them.
You look so like, I've got this.
I know, I did.
You look like you were enjoying it, that every, like you say, every glance down that, down the barrel of the lens, absolutely perfection.
Challenging the camera and everything.
But the camera loved you as well.
I remember Madness were there, and I was a huge Madness fan, and they were doing, I can't remember what they were doing now. So, anyway, one of their great tracks. One of their great tracks. And I was totally overwhelmed by their presence, Yeah. I mean, they're a pretty overwhelming lot anyway, all those boys jumping around the stage with their nutty hats on and all that attitude. Yes, yeah. Hey, and what girl wouldn't be a bit overawed by Madness?
And with Altered Images and Claire Grogan, did you know these guys? Were these one of your early day kind of like pals?
I do remember it became known that I was a fan of them, and then I remember getting a signed picture that someone had got for me from the whole band. I've still got it in my scrapbook at home. I think out of all the female artists at that time, there was something about Claire, and I just loved everything about Altered Images. I love their records. They sounded great. They were produced by Martin Rushent, who produced Dare for the Human League. So there was just something really magic about.
The great thing about having Kim Wilde on my playlist is, Kim, you were the 80s and you knew all these artists, and that your stories were amazing. Human League is so difficult to pick one tune, isn't it, by them? And I'm going to be unkind. What's the one song you want?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favourite, and I had an amazing 12-inch version of it, which I love listening to still, is Fascination.
Yeah.
But Dare was one of the most influential albums right at the beginning of my career that really had a huge impact on my brother Ricky and his production.
Why was that? What inspired him?
He loved all the synth work. He loved that minimal sort of production. But I mean, Rick loved rock and roll too, and so Kids in America is sort of a combination of those influences of a bit of rock and roll and a bit of synth.
Yeah. But
there was something about Martin Rushent's amazing production, and Rick really zoomed into it. I mean, he was only 19 himself at the time,
it's amazing.
And that kind of technology was just really overwhelming. And somehow he literally just kind of drank it all up. Clever sod that he is, and he still is. He's still making amazing music for us and for me.
I mentioned to you, I saw you at London Palladium, your gig. So this would have been a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And your dad was there on that night.
Yeah, my dad came.
Rick was there.
Yeah.
Obviously. Is it your niece was on stage?
My niece Scarlett.
Amazing. And I saw you singing together. It was an incredible show. But
Thank you.
My first time seeing you, but it really came alive that it's such a family event, isn't it? Kim Wilde, your live shows, all the family were involved in it, and they all look so proud to be there that night.
Yeah.
I mean, you sold out the Palladium. The atmosphere was electric. How did it feel?
Thank you.
It's amazing. I think I'm a fan.
Bless you. Well, I mean, it was an overwhelming evening. I've had several of those since, I have to say. As I've got older, when I go into a venue and it's sold out, and it's happening a lot these days, which is wonderful, and it really does blow my mind. Obviously, I'm not 25 anymore, or even 21 when I started. I'm nearly 64. I'll be 64
incredible.
This year.
Wow.
And that's a lot of life. A lot of things have happened, and then to turn up and see all these people still going crazy, it gets more. I get very emotional about it. I can barely believe it's still happening at this point in my life, and I can tell you hands down, I'm not enjoying it. I've never enjoyed it as much as I enjoy it now, and I tell you why. It's because I appreciate it more now. I think I did take a lot for granted in the 20s, like Top of the Pops, another hit record. I think maybe there's a little bit of that.
Okay.
But not anymore.
I love the fact you put some of your own. I did ask you to put some of your own, and you keep me hanging on.
Yes.
Tell me about this, because this is like, I always think of you in the 80s as having maybe kind of 3 or 4 different chapters with the albums that come out. Tell me what life was like when this song came out, because this was huge.
Yeah, Hanging On was one of the last songs that we put on the Another Step album, and it came out just before 1988. So 1988 was a turning point for me with another album. The Another Step album, I'd had a big hit with Junior Giscombe with that particular song, but the big hit on the Another Step album was of a cover version and Rick's amazing production of You Keep Me Hanging On. It ended up going to _1 in America, and I spent a bit of time over there. It was. I remember going into the studio. Ricky had played me the backing track, and I said to him, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to listen to any versions. I'm not going to listen particularly to Diana Ross's, of whom I'm a huge fan. I hadn't heard the song for many, many years. I won't listen to any other version. I'll go in cold and see what comes out. And I think that's where all the freshness of the approach, even the additional lyrics maybe that we put in, we had an amazing telemessage from Lamont Dozier, which I keep on my desk, thanking us for making him look good, for goodness sakes, making him look good, and making his song a #1 for the 3rd time, I think it was at that point. my knowledge of the song was very limited. I had no idea what I was getting into, and I think the spontaneity is what really helped the energy of that
That's
song.
amazing to hear that, because you really did make it your own, but I suppose in not revisited it, it was a fresh project for you, I guess. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think it certainly helped, but nothing quite matched, I think, Rick's amazing production on that particular song.
Yeah,
he really smashed it out the park.
And we spoke earlier about, you performing live. Is this as we go into this song, is this a favourite of yours to perform? Do you like doing this one?
I mean, playing You Keep Me Hanging On is as much fun as playing Kids in America. The reaction is a wow, and we save it for a little bit later on in the set for good reason.
Yeah, and Kim has got such a great taste in music, because I said to you earlier about Bowie, and you said, yes, Steve, Ashes to Ashes, which is the next one we're going to play now.
Yeah, I mean, I loved, I'm always a big fan of Bowie. I mean, of course, we had Hunky Dory at home in the 70s, and I played that a lot. I love that album. That was a great album. Then I kind of got distracted a little bit from Bowie. I got into Young Americans, and then I kind of veered off into maybe more of a pop world at that point.
Yeah.
And then I got back into Bowie with the Ashes to Ashes album. The album was called that, I think, wasn't it? And the single. Just thought it was really cool, great track. And then I ended up touring with him in 1990.
This was going to be my next question,
which was just astonishing.
What was he like? Did you know him before you toured? How did that work out?
Okay, no, I didn't know him, but because I'd sold a lot of records and had a lot of success in mainland Europe, which is where we were mostly touring, the promoters all, everyone, I could say, well, Bowie was just gagging to get Kim Wilde on his tour. I'm sure he was delighted, and I know that he was, but the promoters were, they said, it's going to work. Kim Wilde's a pop sensation.
Of course.
Here. Let's get her on. It'll work well, and it did work really well.
Did you have the chance to get to know him or hang out with him?
Only a tiny bit. I remember, he sent me flowers when the tour began. He'd pop in occasionally and have a good one, Kim, very down to earth, lovely sort of London accent. I was absolutely hopelessly infatuated with him.
Really?
I mean, I defy any human being at all, across the board, anyone who would not be infatuated with that man.
Yeah.
There was just something hugely charismatic and gorgeous about him. And at the end, I remember I went in with the Marty Wilde t-shirt. I thought I didn't know what to give him. What do you give David Bowie? So I thought, I'll give him a Marty Wilde t-shirt. And I remember sort of just knocking on the dressing room, and he was sitting there having his makeup done, and I gave him a Marty Wilde too. Marty! And he put it up against it. It was so sweet. So, lovely, lovely guy, and a lovely moment that we shared. And not many people can say that they had a beautiful smile from David Bowie right into their eyes.
Can I tell you a bit about my life?
Will you? Yeah.
It's like therapy.
It's not all about me,
Well, listen. So 1988 was the year I discovered music, and I always remember this. I picked up a copy of Smash Hits magazine, and you're on the front cover with Michael Jackson.
Yes.
And it was like the summer of 88, and I looked at, and you were doing the Bad tour with him, weren't you? The Wembley dates. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'd love to go and see this show. And it was around the same time as You Came Out and stuff. Can I take you back to that summer and that tour? What was it like?
Wow. Where do I start? I mean, it was a life-changing year. I remember when we got the phone call, Kim, do you want to go on the Michael Jackson tour? And I remember, virtually screaming down the phone to my mum, because this was in the days before mobile phones, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, and I remember saying, I can't do the Michael Jackson tour. Are you joking? I said, he's the king of pop. He's virtually, no. I can't be on the same stage as that man. I can't do it. And then, of course, I had my mum. Of course you can do it. Of course you can do it. You're as good as him. You're as good, like mums do.
Bless mum.
Yeah, like mums do. Of course, you're every bit as good as he is. Some people, whatever, mum. Really. We'll see, won't we? We'll see. Anyway, she changed my mind from a no to a I can't possibly do that to of course I can. And we ended up doing 30 odd shows. We were all over mainland Europe. I think we did 7 nights consecutively at the old Wembley Stadium. My album Close was out at the time, and we had some huge hits on it with You Came, Never Trust a Stranger,
Four Letter Word,
Hey Mr.
Heartache. I love it.
So it was my year. I mean, it was just one of those special moments in time, and I couldn't believe I was doing a tour with Michael Jackson, and it went really, really well. And I still have people say, "I saw you on stage. You were great. Everything was brilliant." And it was.
Question I've got to ask you, Kim, is as I asked you with Bowie, you're on tour with Michael Jackson.
Yes.
Did you see him? Did you hang out backstage? Did you have dinner together? Did he watch you perform? I've got so many questions. Tell me about everything.
Well, I got told he did watch me on a screen he had in his dressing room, and I didn't. I got to meet him once for a photo opportunity, and that photograph is widely available on the internet. And it was the one picture we had taken. That was the last time I saw him up close. Remarkably tall man, I thought. I wasn't expecting him to be quite so tall. His manager, Frankie DeLeo at the time, took a shine to me and would often let me stand side of stage and watch the whole production from the monitor desk.
What was that like?
Which was pretty astonishing. And I have to say, it really inspired me to up my own personal game. I just thought, wow, this is as good as it can be. I really got some work to do. So I do thank him for giving me that opportunity to do that, and to play in front of millions of people during that part of my career. I've got nothing but wonderful memories.
Can you remember the first of those bad gigs when you stepped out onto Wembley? Was it like, how did you feel?
It was a bit overwhelming. I think it might have been in Italy where we started, and they didn't know me so well in Italy. And the reception was anything but friendly, if
Really?
I remember rightly. Anything but friendly.
Well, obviously, when you got to London, everyone loved it. I mean, it was like you were part of that show. I mean, it's like both of you. Wow, the Italy.
I don't think they thought that in Rome. No, they were kind of like, whoever. We want Michael. So that was funny. That was a leveler. It was interesting. I found some fantastic stage gear. By the time I got to Paris, I went shopping and found those fantastic little bolero outfits that I wore. And culottes down to the knees or something. I bought those outfits in Paris, and then it all came together. So it got off to a shaky start. Was a bit like, Mum, I want to come home.
Right.
And then we got into our stride.
And then by the end, you're like, I've got this.
I totally got it. It changed my life as a performer, and as a performer and as a person, actually.
And you've picked from this album, because this bad album obviously had, was it like 10 out of the 11 tracks were actually released?
Yes.
And they got into the top 10, and you picked this one. No one's ever picked this song on this show. Another Part of Me. Tell me about this.
I love this song.
Yeah.
It's such a groove. It's such a groove. I remember I'd be backstage, and when this one came on, it didn't matter if I was doing my makeup or whatever. I just have to sit there, just melt into this groove. Just brilliant.
Now, we spoke about 1988, and I know that you play loads of songs from this year, because it was a big year for you, 88, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But the thing is, the whole decade was huge. But I suppose as a young teen in 88, I remember this album, and You Came, and all the songs, Never Trust a Stranger and stuff. You Came is an incredible pop song. I think it's hard to pick your favourite Kim Wilde song. I think this is mine.
I love You Came, I really do, and I think it's one of my brother Ricky's finest moments as a composer and producer.
What is it about this song that's so special?
Well, you know what? If we all knew what made a great song special, and we put it in a bottle, and we'd be multi-millionaires. I mean, there's something magical that happens with some songs. Some songs have more of that magic potion than others. Some don't have it at all. And so this one has it in gallons.
Kim, it's been so special meeting you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Oh, bless you, and you too.
I want to plug the show again, if I may. So
yes.
just in case you haven't picked up, Kim is our new presenter on Virgin Radio 80s Plus. It's Sunday mornings, 10 a.m, and you just play your favourite songs. You sound like you're having a great time. Welcome to the team.
Virgin Radio.